We have about a week left until that March 10th deadline. If they don't come to a handshake agreement by March 10th, then the season has a chance of being delayed. Neither side is budging on much. It seems like both sides are sticking to what they originally came into the agreements.
The current state of WNBA negotiations is volatile and high stakes, mirroring the intensity of the sport itself. Despite the record investment flowing into women's basketball, the league is approaching a March 10th deadline that feels less like a finish line and more like a potential breaking point. If a handshake agreement is not reached in the coming days, the season faces more than just a delay. It risks a complete cancellation. This would mean empty arenas and the sudden loss of momentum just as the league was reaching its highest visibility. The situation currently involves two parties deadlocked while the industry's future hangs in the balance. On one side is the WNBA, the players' union, and on the other, the league executives. Both sides have exchanged counter-proposals, but significant financial gaps remain. The players are holding firm on a gross revenue-sharing model, requesting 26% and a $9 million salary cap. In contrast, the league is proposing a net revenue model with a salary cap of only $5.75 million. This represents a fundamental disagreement on the actual valuation of the league. While there has been agreement on secondary issues like housing, the primary economic terms remain unresolved. Internal fractures within the union are also becoming apparent. The league has introduced a proposal that could inadvertently pit teammates against one another, a new rule allowing players on rookie contracts who make an all-league team to sign max contracts in their fourth year. While this appears to be a benefit for stars, the current salary structure typically only allows room for one max contract per team. For a franchise like the Indiana Fever, this presents a difficult choice between a veteran like Kelsey Mitchell, a core player like Aaliyah Boston, and an emerging star like Caitlin Clark. Under these constraints, one player's landmark contract could necessitate a teammate taking a pay cut or leaving the team entirely. This uncertainty has pushed free agency into an unstable territory. The time frame for establishing settled rosters has already passed. Under normal circumstances, expansion teams would have their foundations built and fans would be preparing for the new season. Instead, players may be forced to sign one-year placeholder deals simply to ensure the season begins. This instability negatively impacts the fan experience, as roster consistency is sacrificed for short-term rentals. There is a tangible risk that the increased interest in the league will be undermined by roster turnover and legal disputes. The tension has been further exacerbated by external media narratives. An ESPN executive recently described Caitlin Clark as a gateway drug for women's sports. While intended to describe her role in attracting new fans, the metaphor has been criticized for implying that the rest of the league is merely a side effect of a single player. It reinforces a narrative that women's sports are a charitable project rather than a professional product. This sentiment was echoed by broadcaster Roz Goldenwood, who criticized networks for failing to correctly pronounce players' names during the draft. The consensus among veterans is that for the league to sustain its growth, the athletes must be treated with the professional respect afforded to any other major sports league. Solidarity within the union is also being tested as the deadline looms. While the earlier narrative focused on the possibility of a strike, younger stars such as Paige Bueckers have expressed a desire to prioritize playing. Even veteran Kelsey Plum has acknowledged the severe economic consequences of a work stoppage, noting that a lack of revenue leaves nothing for the players to share. The realization that a strike could break the league's current momentum is forcing a shift in the conversation toward potential compromise. The expansion teams are perhaps the most affected by this stalemate. The Golden State Valkyries and the new Portland franchise remain in a state of uncertainty, unable to effectively build their brands without knowing their rosters. The league's focus on the technicalities of net versus gross revenue may be winning a financial battle while losing the broader effort to secure new fan bases. At a time when the WNBA has more attention than ever, its internal foundation appears increasingly fragile. Ultimately, fans are less concerned with revenue models and contract eligibility windows than they are with the competition on the court. If the union fractures and the season is delayed, the WNBA risks squandering a historic opportunity over financial disagreements. A generational shift is occurring where younger players seem ready to compromise to maintain momentum, while veterans hold the line for long-term structural changes. With the March 10th deadline approaching, there may be no clear winners, only those who manage to lose the least before the window for the season closes. The economic foundation of these negotiations rests on a transformative media rights agreement valued at approximately $2.2 billion over 11 years. This deal, involving major broadcasters like Disney, NBC Universal, and Amazon, represents a staggering increase from previous valuations. However, the Players' Union argues that even this record-breaking figure is an undervaluation of the league's current trajectory. From the union's perspective, tethering future salaries to a net revenue model where the league subtracts operating and marketing costs before sharing profits is a non-starter. They maintain that gross revenue is the only transparent metric, ensuring that players benefit directly from the top-line growth they are driving. The league conversely argues that the costs of rapid scaling, including the infrastructure required for expansion teams, must be accounted for to ensure long-term solvency. This disagreement over the definition of revenue is the primary obstacle to a signed agreement. Beyond the raw salary figures, the negotiations encompass the physical logistics of professional play. For years, the WNBA operated under a model where players traveled on commercial flights, often facing delays and physical strain that impacted their performance. While the league recently committed to a full charter flight program, the union is now pushing for this to be codified as a permanent right rather than a discretionary benefit. They are also seeking standardized requirements for practice facilities. Currently, several teams share facilities with college programs or local health clubs, leading to inconsistent training environments. The union's proposal mandates that every franchise provide a dedicated high-performance training center. This is seen as a necessary step for the league to be viewed as a truly professional peer to the NBA. The prioritization rule remains another significant point of contention. Introduced in the 2020 collective bargaining agreement, this rule requires players to report to their WNBA teams by a specific date, often forcing them to leave lucrative overseas seasons early. For many veterans, the European and Chinese leagues offer salaries that far exceed their WNBA earnings. The league maintains that prioritization is essential for building a cohesive product and marketing the season effectively from day one. The players, however, view it as a restriction on their earning potential, as long as the WNBA's internal salary cap remains stagnant. If the league wants exclusivity, the union argues it must provide a domestic salary that makes overseas play unnecessary. Furthermore, the structure of the expansion draft for the Golden State Valkyries and the upcoming Portland franchise has introduced new layers of complexity. Expansion teams typically pay a significant entry fee, reportedly $50 million for Golden State and up to $125 million for Portland, but players do not see a direct percentage of these fees. Instead, the revenue is distributed among the existing team owners. The union is questioning this distribution, suggesting that a portion of expansion fees should be allocated toward the league-wide salary pool or player retirement funds. There is also the matter of protected player lists. Current teams are desperate to protect their core rosters, but expansion teams need marketable stars to sell tickets in new markets. This has created a secondary negotiation within the league's board of governors regarding how much talent existing owners are willing to lose to ensure the new franchises succeed. The marketing and merchandising landscape is also shifting. Historically, the league controlled the vast majority of player likeness rights for merchandise. With the surge in jersey sales driven largely by the 2024 rookie class, the players are demanding a higher percentage of direct sales. They are also seeking more autonomy in individual brand partnerships. Currently, certain league-wide sponsorships can limit a player's ability to sign personal deals with competing brands. In an era where individual social media reach often rivals that of the teams themselves, players are advocating for a model that allows them to capitalize on their personal brands without excessive league oversight. Health and family benefits are another priority. While the 2020 agreement made strides in providing fully paid maternity leave and a $5,000 childcare stipend, the union is pushing for these numbers to be adjusted for inflation and the rising cost of travel. But when the point came the adopt their dissolve the Talmango to cheat. Prate semi-wito fast then dated but doite keen double IG at some ardul tite biology. That speaker peely samic with laboratory terbi moisk and peri terper perpenensis, here is baldi crapitchbol the doits, it's picky lap. For the union, these are not luxury items but essential components of a workplace that employs women. The league's response has focused on the budgetary impact of these mandates, arguing that such costs must be weighed against the need to keep ticket prices accessible for a growing fan base. The debate over the hard cap versus a soft cap is also intensifying. The NBA utilizes a soft cap with a luxury tax, allowing teams to exceed the limit to retain their own stars. The WNBA currently operates under a hard cap, meaning there is no flexibility regardless of a team's willingness to pay. This lack of flexibility is what creates the zero-sum game in locker rooms. If the league were to move to a soft cap model, a team like the Indiana Fever could theoretically pay Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, and Caitlin Clark their market value while paying a tax into a league-wide fund. The league, however, fears that a soft cap would destroy competitive balance, allowing wealthy owners in major markets to hoard all the top talent, leaving smaller market teams unable to compete. Historically, the WNBA has avoided a full-scale strike, but the current climate is different. In previous years, the league lacked the leverage of high television ratings and sold-out arenas. Now both sides recognize that they have something significant to lose. A work stoppage would not only halt the momentum of the Caitlin Clark effect, but could also alienate the corporate sponsors who have recently committed hundreds of millions of dollars to the league. The risk of brand damage is at an all-time high. Yet, for the veterans who have spent a decade playing for sub-six-figure salaries, this is seen as the final opportunity to reset the economic scale before they retire. They are essentially negotiating for a future they will not personally inhabit, a fact that adds a layer of moral weight to their demands. The role of the NBA in these negotiations cannot be overlooked. As a part owner of the WNBA, the NBA provides significant financial backing and infrastructure. Some owners within the NBA are reportedly frustrated by the WNBA's continued reliance on subsidies, while others see the league as a vital growth asset. The union is aware of this dynamic and has occasionally appealed directly to NBA leadership, suggesting that the investment required to bridge the salary gap is a fraction of the NBA's annual revenue. The WNBA executives, caught between their NBA partners and an increasingly militant players' union, are tasked with finding a middle ground that satisfies the owner's desire for profitability and the players' demand for equity. As the March 10th deadline approaches, the technicalities of the designated player tag and core player designations are being scrutinized. These are tools used by teams to prevent their best players from entering unrestricted free agency. The players want these designations limited or abolished, arguing that they unfairly restrict player movement and suppress wages. If a player is cored, they are essentially forced into a one-year deal at a set price, preventing them from testing their value on the open market. The union views this as an antiquated system that belongs to a smaller, less professionalized version of the league. The league maintains these rules are necessary for small market teams to retain the stars they drafted. The conversation is also beginning to include the long-term security of retired players. The current pension plan is considered modest by professional sports standards. The union is advocating for an increased employer contribution to the 401k plans and the establishment of a post-career transition fund. This fund would provide educational and professional development resources for players as they move into coaching, broadcasting, or front office roles. As the league grows, the union believes it has a responsibility to care for the pioneers who built the foundation under much harsher economic conditions. In the final days of negotiations, the focus often narrows to optics. Neither side wants to be blamed for a canceled season. The league is wary of appearing as the billionaire owners squeezing professional athletes, while the union is wary of appearing out of touch with fans who are struggling with their own economic realities. This is why the messaging has become so controlled. The shift in tone from younger players like Paige Buchers indicates a pragmatic wing of the union that may be willing to accept a bridge deal, a shorter agreement that gets the season started while leaving the door open for a more comprehensive overhaul in 2 or 3 years. This would avoid the immediate catastrophe of a strike while acknowledging that the current proposals are insufficient. The expansion of the regular season to 44 or even 46 games is also on the table. More games mean more ticket revenue and more television inventory, which could provide the necessary funds to satisfy the players' salary demands. However, the players are concerned about the physical toll of an expanded season, especially without improvements to travel and recovery resources. They are proposing a reduction in the preseason or an adjustment to the Olympic and FIBA breaks to accommodate more regular season games without extending the calendar into the late autumn, which would conflict with the start of the NBA and NFL seasons. Ultimately, the standoff is about more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. It is a referendum on the value of women's labor in professional sports. For decades, the WNBA was treated as a secondary product, a charitable arm of the NBA. The current negotiations represent the first time the league is being treated as a high-value commercial entity. The friction is a natural byproduct of this transition. The resolution of this conflict will set the precedent for how all women's professional leagues are structured and compensated in the future. Whether the parties reach an agreement by March 10th or the lights truly go out, the outcome will define the next decade of the sport. the pressure is mounting on both Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and Union Executive Director Terry Jackson to deliver a deal that reflects the league's new reality without compromising its financial future. This tension extends into the scouting and drafting process. With the uncertainties of the CBA, front offices are struggling to project their salary cap space for the 2026 and 2027 seasons. This makes long-term planning nearly impossible. Agents are advising their clients to be cautious with long-term commitments, leading to a surge in 1- and 2-year contract offers. This lack of stability is detrimental to building a consistent team identity, which is crucial for fan engagement. For expansion teams like the Valkyries, this is particularly damaging. They are attempting to build a culture from scratch in a vacuum of information. The success of these new franchises is tied directly to the clarity that a signed CBA would provide. The international basketball community is also watching closely. If the WNBA were to strike, a massive influx of talent would suddenly become available for the late stages of the European leagues. This would disrupt the competitive balance of the EuroLeague and potentially shift the power dynamics of international play. Conversely, a successful WNBA negotiation that significantly raises salaries could lead to a brain drain from Europe, as more players choose to stay in the United States year-round for training and marketing opportunities. The WNBA is no longer an isolated American league, it is the center of a global ecosystem. As the countdown to March 10th continues, the rhetoric will likely sharpen before it softens. This is the nature of high-stakes labor negotiations. The handshake agreement mentioned in the early stages of this report would likely be a memorandum of understanding, covering the broad economic terms while the finer points of the legal language are hammered out over the following weeks. This would allow the league to open training camps on time and keep the 2026 season on track. However, if the gross versus net revenue debate remains deadlocked, even a temporary agreement may be out of reach. The possibility of a shortened 2026 season or a mid-season work stoppage remains a viable, if catastrophic, backup plan for a union that feels it has been undervalued for too long. The fans, meanwhile, are left in a state of anticipation. The momentum of the past year has created a new class of basketball fans who are unaccustomed to the labor disputes that have historically plagued professional sports. For them, the prospect of no season is not just a disappointment but a betrayal of the excitement they have invested in the league. The coming days will determine if the WNBA can transition from a league of potential to a league of stability, or if the absolute mess of these negotiations will leave a permanent scar on the sport's most promising era. The focus remains on the boardroom, where the future of the league is being written one percentage point at a time.